I have waited a long time for you, champion of old Tamriel. You were the last gasp of a dying age. You breathed the stale air of false hope. How little you understand. You cannot stop Lord Dagon.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to a very, very special episode. If I sound a bit stuffy, it's because I'm getting over the flu, so I've covered Dagothur, Alduin, and even Miraak here on this channel. So for months, going on a year, people have been asking to see good old Mankar Camoran, one of the main antagonists of the Elderscrolls for Oblivion. And at last, here we are. But I want to dedicate this video to one of my subscribers, Animalakaris. Dude, I hope you enjoy it, and here we go. Mankar is an extremely mysterious villain, and I think I've said that about all of our Elder Scrolls villains. He is the leader of the Mythic Dawn cult, a mighty force here in Oblivion. And while he isn't the overall main bad guy you're building up to kill at like the end of the game, he is instrumental in the events of the story and leaves a lasting impression. Camoran and his followers orchestrate a grand plot to assassinate the Emperor Uriel Septim VII, along with all of his royal heirs, to pave the way for their cult's target of zealotry, Mehrunes Dagon, Daedric Prince of Destruction, to invade Tamriel and bring an end to the Third Era. But would you be surprised if I told you that things are not just that straightforward? Because the further we dig into this character and the backstory, the more question marks appear. Just who is this madman? How is he able to wear the Amulet of Kings, a relic suited only for Dragonborn? What did he do to earn himself his own slice of Oblivion as a mortal? And was he really all that mad? Well, let's get right down to it. Be sure to like the video if you do like it, and subscribe for more videos that are just like this one right here. So as we always do, how about we begin at the beginning? Well, for Mankar Camoran, the beginning is hazy at best, because his concrete origins are actually unknown for sure, but what we think we know starts with the Camoran dynasty. The Camoran dynasty is a large royal family tree that spans nearly the entire history of the province of Valenwood, home of the Bosmer or Wood Elves. And beyond just that, it spans the entire written history of Tamriel as we know it, as the founding of the Camoran dynasty by its first king, King Eplir, is widely accepted as the event that began the year zero of the very first era. So this is potentially some old blood we are talking about with Mankar Camoran. The history of this dynasty spans ages, great kings, tyrants, wars, betrayals, and so much more. But along this thread of time, in the throes of the Third Era, or the era that the game Oblivion eventually takes place in, the Camoran dynasty had mostly taken up post as a figurehead monarchy in Valenwood. But eventually, a dispute of succession arose, and many different people popped up as claimants of this throne. It's very typical aristocratic kind of bullshit, you know what I mean? But this struggle for power caused much unrest and eventually war in the region. One of these claimants was a guy named Camoran Kaltos, who through strategic movements and ruthless command, had claimed much of Valenwood over the course of a 2-year campaign. He did this along with his chief lieutenant, friend, and head sorcerer named Mankar Camoran. It seemed that Valenwood was under Kaltos' command, the throne there for his taking, but Haman saw the lands and peoples of the north as a threat, as well as ripe fruit for the picking. He took a large chunk of their shared army and split, ravaging Calovia and just generally being a complete asshole. Kaltos pleaded with his old friend to come home and chill out.
Come on, man, what are you doing?
But Haman refused, and in turn grabbed the Camoran throne for himself. After this event, he was known far and wide as the Camoran Usurper. This led to around 2 decades of just anarchy in Western Tamriel, as the Usurper caused tons of chaos all the way up into Hammerfell and even High Rock. During this reign of the Usurper, or Haman the Heart King as he was also known, it seems that he had a sort of mistress. Though, perhaps and probably more than one, the mistress we are interested in is a Bosmer woman named Callus. But back to her in just 1 second. Now this ride as Usurper must have been a blast for old Haman, but hey, everything must come to an end eventually. And his old master Kaltos had rallied enough support in Western Tamriel with other factions and races to muster big force to oppose the Usurper. And at last, after much conflict, in the barony of High Rock known as Dwynnen, the Camoran Usurper was surrounded, defeated, and killed. But just before the final battle, Callus and other refugees from the Usurper's reign were kind of hanging around in an encampment within the city's walls. As the fighting began, Callus just went into a frenzy. She screamed, that Mankar was coming to destroy them all. Of course, no one knew who the hell Mankar was, so everyone's just kind of looking around awkwardly like, the hell is she talking about? But this screaming continued, stating that Mankar had arrived, he was here, he would be the end of everything and see the world set ablaze, stuff like that. And this continued and continued until the height of the battle, when refugees could see smoke from the burning docks and hear the conflict moving closer, a very tense situation, when Callus snuck away to find some healers and secretly gave birth to a baby boy. And that little boy is, of course, our very own Mankar Camoran.
The time of cleansing draws nigh.
The son of the Camoran usurper and his Bosmer mistress. If you buy into the lore connection here the way that I certainly do. So one confusing side thing, let's pause for a second, is what exactly is Mankar's race? Race and identity play a huge role in the Elder Scrolls universe, so you'd think they would want to make this quite clear. But, I mean, in the game, if you've played it, of course you know he looks like an Altmer, or a High Elf. But if you're looking at this Valenwood history and taking it as it is presented here, he should just be a straight-up Wood Elf, right? Well, officially within Oblivion, his race is listed as Altmer, so why is that? Well, it could be that the Camoran dynasty, one of the oldest elven bloodlines around, is descended from some super old elf blood. Altmer, Ayleid, I mean, who knows for sure. But actually, it seems that it's probably this added story element of Mehrunes' Razor, an artifact with which Mankar uses to kind of alter himself and his reality to his liking. Now, we do learn at some point that he altered his body, amongst other things. So if he is so obsessed with this ancient elf ancestry and the Ayleid architecture and all that jazz, I mean, why not carve himself just a little bit taller, a little more yellow-toned, to better represent his idea of elf superiority? Or, the best theory of all is that the writers had to change him to an Altmer within the game because Bosmer were just goofy potato-eating gnomes that no one would find intimidating.
Yes! Oh, great and mighty Grand Champion!
Anyway, let's get back to this backstory. Now, no one really knows what Callus did with Mankar after this. She fled the situation, and we can assume that Mankar had some sort of upbringing in the magical arts, or possibly even the occult. I mean, some sources say that Callus fled with her son into the wilderness, and others say that she abandoned him there at the place of birth and split. I mean, did the usurper before his death even know that she was pregnant, that he had a son on the way? Probably not, but who knows? All we really have here for sure with Mankar is a probable origin story, and the reappearance of him some 200 or so years later as he begins to take up his role as a villain. So sadly for me, there isn't all that juicy in-betweens about the path that Mankar took to be radicalized and turned into this Daedric cult mass-attending manipulating master of evil. But somewhere along the way in his early life, Mankar was drawn into worshipping the Daedric prince, Mehrunes Dagon. This is key. And Mankar was devout enough, or lucky enough, I guess, to be chosen by Dagon as the new owner of a very powerful and evil relic known as the Mysterium Xarxes. Now, this is a very evil and stinky book written by Dagon himself, and this is really the beginning of Camoran's villainy as we know it. So maybe, just maybe, before he was being whispered sweet nothings by the big man, Mankar was a normal mage guy. I mean, I kinda doubt it. I think he's nuts to his core. But he was certainly corrupted further by the whispers of a Daedric prince, because this Mysterium Xarxes filled Mankar's head with wonder. I mean, prophecies, promises, poetry, and other dark secrets. The book is extremely dangerous to even handle without some sort of magical protection, so I think we can safely assume that Mankar's brains were just totally scrambled after diving in and taking this for light reading. But reading this book led Mankar to pen his own opus, a collection of commentaries that would end up being the very foundation of the mythic Dawn cult. He very creatively titled them Commentaries on the Mysterium Xarxes. Now, I'm going to get into the contents of Mankar's writings and his personal philosophies for the world and all that jazz in a moment. So let's first just finish off this backstory. So along with radicalizing Mankar and turning him into a New York Times best-selling author, the Mysterium Xarxes also gave him the power to open a portal to Oblivion itself. Now, for the uninitiated, Oblivion is the realm of the Daedra and Daedric princes, a different plane of reality altogether from our own. Mehrunes Dagon's realm within Oblivion is known as the Deadlands, which you get to see in the game more than enough. But using the ability to access Oblivion, Mankar created Gaiar Alata, or his paradise, his very own little piece of Oblivion. which would serve as a home base for his growing cult and a haven for himself and his 2 freaky children, Raven and Ruma. I mean, very little is known about Mankar's life outside of the cult's dealings around this time. I mean, is there a mother to these children? Not quite, but we'll come back to that later, because if you're rubbing elbows with Daedric princes, I don't think you really have to worry about getting out and meeting people. But Mankar and the cult's purpose was becoming extremely clear: to assassinate the Emperor of Cyrodiil, all of his heirs, steal the Amulet of Kings to weaken the realm, and begin opening those portals for Dagon and his minions to enter and throw a big Daedra party where the snack bowls are just human flesh and souls. So I think that's a good amount of backstory for the fella, and you get the general plan. But what exactly constitutes Mankar Camoran as a madman? What are those philosophies that we find in the writings? Well, to understand Mankar's ideas, I think we first must understand together Lorkhan. So Lorkhan you can think of as, well, God. Well, God of mortals, that is. The being responsible for the existence of Nirn and all who dwell on it. Lorkhan decided one day in his infinite wisdom and existence that he wanted to create Mundus, which is the realm or plane of existence that we consider the mortal realm. He convinced other Ethada, or immortal beings of insane power, to work with him on this little project. Or maybe he tricked them, duping these godlike beings into giving up some of their divinity and power to create this realm. But at any rate, this split the so-called Ethada into those who contributed heavily to this project and those who did not. These beings would eventually be known as Aedra and Daedra, respectively. Now, this is the Elderscrolls, baby, and things aren't just totally clean and nice, because different races have different practices and beliefs as far as what actually happened with the gods and Lorkhan and all of that drama. Also, there are just legitimate little lore farts, especially here in Oblivion, that kind of seem like errors or misplaced things, typos, and just all these different takes on Michael Kirkbride's original lore ideas. I mean, it just gets messy and abstracted. I think if you're watching this video and you like the games, you know that much. So, that is all to say that for this video, I want to try to stick with the elf belief that we see in the games here. Because A, I like it, and B, Mankar is an elf, so we can kind of compare and contrast. So the elf belief with Lorkhan and the gods and the drama is that the Aedra found out Lorkhan tricked them totally into giving up much of their power and making all of reality, and pretty much killed him for it. Major punishment for Lorkhan. But eventually, mortals came to worship the Aedra and the Daedra for various things, though most overwhelmingly viewed the Aedra as the benevolent divines, as they are called, and Daedra as malevolent tricksters, with a handful of exceptions. So what about Mankar Camoran, you might ask? Well, he had been convinced by Dagon that this was just a grotesque retelling of events, a blasphemous sizzle piece on Lorkhan himself. Now, I mentioned earlier that each Daedric prince holds their own plane of oblivion, right? Dagon's Deadlands, Hermaeus Mora's Apocrypha, Molag Bal's Cold Harbor, the list goes on and on for each prince. Well, Mankar and his cult believed that Lorkhan was in fact a Daedric prince, just like their master, and his realm of oblivion is that of Tamriel, or as they call it, Dawn's Beauty, that the death of Lorkhan was a disgusting betrayal at the hands of the Aedra. They also believe that the Aedra, or the divines that are now worshipped in Tamriel, are just weak, baby-ass gods that hide behind mortal worship and are not worthy of any attention, while their counterparts, the Daedra, are much stronger and eternal and worthy of your attention and worship. Now, this is of course somewhat true, if you twist your perspective a little bit, but the Aedra kind of emptied the tank of power that they had to create Mundus, hence why mortals would like worshipping them, like, hey, thanks for everything. While the Daedra, I mean, they vary as far as how much they even care about mortals, and let's just say they aren't widely loved and have a habit of being a little bit evil in one way or another. So this twisted version of divine legend and history have led the Mythic Dawn cults, and especially Mankar Camoran, to deem Tamriel a land of weakness, a realm of stagnation and displaced worship in need of new management. And from their perspective, what better man for the job than the Daedric prince that they all worship, Mehrunes Dagon, who, in addition to being the Prince of Destruction, is also the Prince of Change and Revolution. And it's a pretty compelling narrative to spin, if I'm honest. Your gods suck, look how little they really do, and look at mine. He's huge, he gave me a sick-ass house in Oblivion, and he looks like Forearms from Ben 10. But in all seriousness, I think Mankar is extremely effective as a villain in this way. His twisted version of reality is intriguing enough to lure other mortals into the cult, gain influence, minions, and favor with Dagon as their plan comes further and further into view. He also personally, just isolated, is a really sick and twisted son of a bitch. In his commentaries books, he claims to have eaten his daughter. Her name was Ruma, and I ate her with no bread, and made another, which learned, and I loved that one, and blackbirds formed her twin behind all time. Okay? So it seems his children are kind of just aspects of himself that he cut off of his body with the power of the razor and turned them into living, breathing, speaking people. Pretty sick stuff. His paradise is also a display of his cruelty and his insanity, along with his brainwashing at the hands of Dagon. It is very beautiful to the eye, but the more you explore, the more you realize it's just an absolute horror show, where members of the cult that have died in the mortal realm are being tortured and tormented by Daedra for all eternity, literally begging you to stop this madness. I mean, it's so bad, his former right-hand man tries to join up with you to help kill him toward the end.
Let me help you kill Mankar Camoran. I am not without power. I am no match for Mankar Camoran, but perhaps together we can find a way to defeat him. Lead on!
This is a paradise for Mankar and his freakish children only, although it is right in line with Dagon's methods of torture to become ascended. After so much pain and anguish, the idea is that you will be a higher being. So, Mankar talks a big talk, and he seems to definitely have made really good friends with Mehrunes Dagon. But how much in the loop really is he? Well, surprise, surprise. I think our dear cult leader here was duped by the Daedric prince just a little bit. I think Dagon is willing to tell and give Mankar anything he desires, for he needed the use of the hands of a mortal in his scheme. But what are the actual plans for Tamriel here? Well, full credit to Reddit user HappyB3 for this wordage. I came across it several months ago when I was first writing this video, and I just think it sums it up perfectly. Mehrunes Dagon never planned to turn Tamriel into the Deadlands, at least not permanently, or even paradise. He would just utterly destroy the continent until life is completely impossible and purged from the world, and then have something else made in its place, starting over with a blank slate. Change through revolution, destruction, and ambition is the crux of Mehrunes Dagon's sphere. In this new world, people would be tortured and reincarnated until they transcended their condition, just like in paradise, a taste of the Tamriel to come. But first, the world must be cleansed until nothing is left. His followers and subjects are being tortured and tempered for their own good, to improve them through violence and make them gods among men. So, maybe I'm wrong, but something tells me Dagon was ready to just throw Mankar away the second he had control of Tamriel. He's nothing more than a tool. So now comes the great point in this video where we have to ask the question, why did Mankar fail? I mean, of all the villains we've covered here on this channel, Mankar possibly got the closest to glory. And he personally is an incredibly powerful mage, wizard, summoner, whatever you want to call him. So how did it go wrong? Well, the plan goes off nearly perfectly. He assassinates the Emperor, assassinates all of the royal heirs with scary precision, and then shortly after, begins his invasion with Dagon. Or wait, did he? Because there seems to be one little thing that seemed to get away. The Emperor's bastard son, who had been hidden in plain sight as a lowly priest in the town of Kvatch. None other than Martin Septim, who's pretty much the main hero of the entire game, and yes, I am working on a Heropedia for old Marty as we speak in the background.
Emperor Uriel Septim? You think the Emperor is my father? No, you must have the wrong man. I am a priest of Akatosh. My father was a farmer.
He was hidden as a baby to be raised by simple folk, and even he was completely unaware of his royal lineage. So by saving Martin, bringing him into the safety of the Blades while we the player venture out to learn more about the mysterious Mythic Dawn cult in Mankar Camoran, the stage is set beautifully to build an opposition to the so-called Master. But I mean, the Daedra invasion begins in Kvatch, where Martin is, so Mankar was as close as like a stray arrow or fireball from having a much firmer grip on the situation. But even still, Mankar is a good improviser. He's able to steal the Amulet of Kings from us. Very shrewd move. And this seems to be a move that tips the scales to hopeless for us in Tamriel.
They've taken it! The Amulet of Kings is gone! The enemy has defeated us at every turn!
Because this is much more than just a pretty gem, but an insanely powerful heirloom and artifact of the Septim line, and one that is the key for either side if they want to come out victorious. But of course, We are the protagonists, Mankar, sorry buddy, and by tracking down all of the Mythic Dawn commentaries, a hidden message is revealed. This allows us to pose as a mortal interested in joining the cult, infiltrating their shrine, and stealing the fabled Mysterium Xarxes. Martin then reveals to us that he has a bit of a history with Daedric cults himself, and kicks back for a while to read the book and find a way to open up his very own portal to paradise so that we can head on inside and claim the amulet. But Martin's mind and our might combine to make an insanely strong combo, and eventually, the materials are amassed and you can finally open a portal into Mankar Camoran's turf.
I believe that Mankar Camoran acts as the anchor for paradise, just as a sigil stone anchors an Oblivion gate in place. Kill Mankar Camoran, and you will unmake his paradise. Shall I open the portal to paradise? Are you ready?
It's a long road getting here, baby, and it feels amazing to finally come face to face with Mr. Camoran. But first, paradise. And this is probably one of the coolest parts of the entire game to me, as the speech that he spouts while you're making your way toward him in paradise is just a wonderful cross-section of his beliefs, plans, and namely his insanity.
So, the cat's paw of the Septims arrives at last. You didn't think you could take me unawares, here of all places, in the paradise that I created. Look now upon my paradise. Gaia Alata in the old tongue, a vision of the past and the future. Behold the savage garden, where my disciples are tempered for a higher destiny, to rule over Tamriel Reborn. If you are truly the hero of destiny, as I hope, the garden will not hold you for long. Lift your eyes to Kairek Agayala, my seat at the pinnacle of paradise. I shall await you there. How little you understand. You cannot stop Lord Dagon. The principalities have sparkled as gems in the black reaches of Oblivion since the first morning. Many are their names and the names of their masters. The cold harbor of Meridia, Periite's quagmire, the 10 moon shadows of Mephala and Dawn's beauty, the princedom of Lorcan, misnamed Tamriel by deluded mortals. Yes, you understand now. Tamriel is just one more Daedric realm of Oblivion, long since lost to its prince when he was betrayed by those that served him. Lord Dagon cannot invade Tamriel, his birthright. He comes to liberate the occupied lands. Ask yourself, how is it that mighty gods die, yet the Daedra stand incorruptible?
Just leave us alone.
How is it that the Daedra forthrightly proclaim themselves to man, while the gods cower behind statues and the faithless words of traitor priests? It is simple. They are not gods at all. The truth has been in front of you since you first were born. The Daedra are the true gods of this universe. Julianos, Dibella, and Stondar are all Lorcan's betrayers, posing as divinities in the principality that has lost its guiding light. What are scholarship, love, and mercy when compared to fate, night, and destruction? The gods you worship are trifling shadows of first causes. They have tricked you for ages. Why do you think your world has always been contested ground, the arena of powers and immortals? It is Tamriel, the realm of change, brother to madness, sister to deceit. Your false gods could not entirely rewrite history. Thus you remember tales of Lorcan vilified, a dead trickster whose heart came to Tamriel. But if a god can die, how does his heart survive? He is Daedroth, Tamriel I Daedroth. This heart is the heart of the world, for one was made to satisfy the other. You all remember this. It is in every legend. Daedra cannot die, So your so-called gods cannot erase him from your minds completely. Well done, champion. Your progress is swift and sure. Perhaps you will reach me after all. You think I mock you? Not at all. In your coming, I hear the footsteps of fate. You are the last defender of decadent Tamriel. I am the midwife of the mythic dawn, Tamriel reborn. I welcome you, if you truly are the agent of fate. I tire of the self-styled heroes who set themselves in my path only to prove unworthy in the event. I have waited a long time for you, champion of old Tamriel. You were the last gasp of a dying age. You breathed the stale air of false hope. How little you understand. You cannot stop Lord Dagon. The walls between our worlds are crumbling. The mythic dawn grows nearer with every rift in the firmament. Soon, very soon, the lines now blurred will be erased. Tamriel and Oblivion rejoined. The mythic age reborn. The Emperor is dead. The Amulet of Kings is mine. And the last defender of the last ragged septim stands before me, in the heart of my power. Let us see who at last has proved the stronger.
And when at last you find and confront the Master, he is wearing the Amulet of Kings. Now, hold the fucking phone. We gotta touch on this for just a second. A relic that is only able to be worn by Dragonborn, or else it slips right off your neck. This is yet another fork in the road as far as lore and interpretation. So maybe the Camerons are just so old and pure of blood that some of them are in fact Dragonborn. I don't personally think that's it. So maybe the game just glitches, as it often does, and it equips the amulet on Mankar automatically. No, I don't think so either. Perhaps then, it's that along with altering his body to become more Altmer in appearance, he also changed his very destiny with Mehrunes Razor. He forcibly gifted himself this dragon blood and this stature of Dragonborn, so he could don the necklace and flex while simultaneously becoming even more powerful and intimidating. Yes, I think that's what I like to believe anyway. Because Mankar, in many ways, lives in a complete fantasy land. Dagon's influence, his own arrogance, and insanity have put him in this place of just elation and delusion. He really, truly sees himself as like the savior of Tamriel. He thinks that he's liberating his homeland and bringing about true change as it ought to be. And I just think any villain worth their salt definitely sees themselves as the hero, right? I mean, he's not even intimidated by your coming to kill him. He's at peace with his destiny, which he so unwaveringly believes to be this sort of demigod for this future Tamriel that he keeps speaking of. So now I want to take a moment to just comment on his ideals, philosophies, and just kind of what I think of them. Because there are plenty of people on the internet that seem to think Mankar is onto something, that indeed Tamriel could be a plane of Oblivion, Lorkhan a Daedra, etc. I mean, it is fun to consider for sure, don't get me wrong, and there is some sound logic to the points that Mankar and the Mythic Dawn live by, especially when you're talking about the Daedra. But I choose to believe that these are mostly the ramblings of an individual completely disconnected from reality. Lorkhan literally could not have been a Daedra, because the Daedra and the Aedra were historically all Et Hada, and only had a line drawn between them based on Lorkhan's tricking or working with some of them and not others to create Mundus. So I guess Mankar was saying, as that line was being drawn in the sand, Lorkhan was actually on our side and not yours. It just doesn't really totally make sense to me. There are also other cultures where Lorkhan is worshipped in Tamriel. I mean, in the Nordic pantheon, he's known as Shor and has a physical throne in Sovngarde. So is that really a Daedra? I mean, wouldn't have someone figured that out by now? It also seems to me that there's a pretty nice balance of things in the lore of the Daedra and Aedra. I mean, these are cosmic, naturally occurring beings here. And Mankar's plan just puts so much emphasis on Dagon as this superior, beastly leader who has a birthright to take another dead Daedric prince's realm. It just, to me, sounds like too much Dagon propaganda was whispered into this dude's ear, and he just ate it all up. But as always, I mean, I have to state in these videos, I am not an expert on the lore at all. I just really love the games, and I started digging deeper when I started this channel last year. So please let me know your thoughts on these things below, because I'm always interested in hearing and learning more and just new perspectives. But at any rate, madman or not, The Grim Reaper has finally come for Mankar. I mean, this is an extremely high-stakes encounter. The Amulet of Kings, the champion of Cyrodiil, and the leader of the Mythic Dawn cult. This is everything at stake, right here. And I love that feeling in a video game, man. The story is told so well, and Mankar is so devilish, that it just feels great to confront him, smash him, and return home safely with that amulet. Mankar largely goes out a complete and utter villain. No redemption, no last breath clarity. He is and was a scoundrel through and through, and deserved the bitter end that we eventually deliver. His legacy as a villain, I think, is fantastic. Oblivion, though it is my favorite Elder Scrolls game, has its fair share of flaws. I think we all know that. Even how Mankar Camoran looks, I mean, he just looks goofy as hell, let's be honest. But the story here, with the voice acting, the presentation, and the writing, even with a few little errors, is just great to me. I love it. Dagon is a fine villain in his own right, but, I mean, he's Daedra. He's bound to his nature of destruction and change, and I think Mankar is just so much more interesting. My only wish here with the character is that I knew more. I mean, what was his childhood like? How did he first come to worship Dagon, and what was it like when he was chosen by Dagon? What did he look like physically before the Razor changed him so dramatically? I could go on and on and on. But to me, he is a quintessential Elder Scrolls villain. Shrouded in mystery, partially insane, and from a certain point of view, potentially right all along. So we wrap up another Villainpedia episode, everyone. And this one was just too long in the making. Sorry it took me a year. Oblivion is just the best, man. I mean, there are so many fun characters in this game. But I have a question for you. What, in your opinion, is an underrated villain from any video game? Let me know in the comments, and I will see you all very soon. Thank you again so much for watching, and until next time, peace!